Hello and welcome to today's lesson on linear inequalities. If you're working in the standard 1.2 in 8th grade, we're going to be covering the topics underneath that standard, and we're also going to be covering the topics under the Study Island lesson, linear inequalities. So if you're working in either of those two places, this is an excellent place to come and get some ideas on how to do those problems. And just make sure as you're going through this video that you are taking notes, and you can pause or rewind the video in order to keep up. And then you can also pause at the beginning of a question, work that problem out, and then start the video up again and see how well you're doing, and then see maybe where you still need some work and what kind of problems you still need to practice. So I'm glad that you could join us today, and let's go ahead and look at some notes.
So today we're going to be looking at solving equations with linear inequalities, and there's one big rule that you have to remember that's different than the other when it's just an equal sign. So if you have a less than symbol or greater than symbol, you need to remember that if you multiply or divide by a negative number on both sides of the equation, you must reverse the inequality. So for example here, to solve this equation, I would have to divide both sides by -5. And so because I'm dividing both sides by a negative number, I'm going to flip this inequality from a less than to a greater than and equal to. And then my final answer would be x is greater than or equal to -2. Whereas here, I would divide both sides by a +6. So the greater than symbol stays a greater than symbol, and my answer is x is greater than or -4. Just a few more notes. Here's all the inequality symbols that you might see. You have your greater than or equal to, a less than, and less than or equal to. And if you get them mixed up, just remember that if you take the L in less than and just smush it down a little bit, it makes a less than symbol. And then when you're looking at, once we're done solving these equations, they could ask us to graph them. And so here, if it's just an equal sign, you're just going to have a dot on that number, on the number line. However, if you have an inequality, you're going to have to shade up or down. And you're also going to have to pay attention to whether it's a closed dot on the number line or an open dot. So you're going to be using a closed dot when you have this equal to part. So if it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, you're going to have a closed dot over that answer on the number line. And then if it's greater than or equal to, you're going to shade up to the greater than, the bigger numbers. And then, but if it's a less than symbol, you're going to shade down smaller to the smaller numbers. And there's a couple examples with a positive and negative number for you. So here, this is an inequality we need to solve, and it's 2 steps because I have 2 numbers. I have the 4, and then remember there's always a 1 as a coefficient in front of the x if there isn't one there. So this is really 4 minus 1x is less than 6. So the 4 is the number is all by itself. It's a positive 4. So the opposite of that is a -4. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, and they cancel. And that minus 1x, make sure that negative symbol stays with the 1, is going to stay carried down. And then I didn't multiply or divide by a negative number, just subtracted. So the less than symbol stays there. And then 6 minus 4 is 2. And then my last step is to divide both sides by a -1. I divided both sides by -1, so it's going to flip my inequality to a greater than. The negative ones cancel, and I'm left with just an x. And then 2 divided by -1 is -2. So that means my answer here is going to be x is greater than or than -2. And so that makes C my final answer. This problem is similar. It's just that when I'm done solving, I have to show the answer on a number line instead of just x inequality a number. So here I just rewrote the problem. I'm gonna have to solve it for x. So I have the -2 and the 5 that I need to move from the x side. And so I always move the number that's being added or subtracted. That's a +5. So the opposite of that is to subtract 5 from both sides. That leaves me with the negative 2x is greater than 11 minus 5 is 6. And then I have to divide both sides by negative 2, the coefficient in front of x. And because I divided both sides by a negative number, that inequality is going to flip to a less than. And then I'm just left with x on the left side, and 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. So now I'm going to look for the number line that says x is less than negative 3. So I just have the less than part. So that means it's going to be an open circle. So the A and B are the only ones that have an open circle on the number line. So it can't be C or D. And then that open circle needs to be over negative 3. And it's a less than and shaded down. So that's going to mean my answer is A. This problem here is the same thing. It gives us an x to solve for, and then we have to find the answer on a number line. And so here I have 1/12 being added to the x term. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 1/12 from both sides. And here's these cancel, and I'm just left with a positive x is less than. And then here, when I'm going to have to do 1/2 minus 1/12. Well, I had to find a common denominator, so that's going to be 12. And so to get 12 on the first one, I have to multiply the top and the bottom by 6. So 1/2 is the same as 6/12. So that's going to mean that I have 6/12 minus 1/12, which is 5/12. So here that means x is going to be less than 5/12. This time I did not multiply or divide by a negative number, so my inequality stays the same. So I'm going to be looking for a number line that has an open dot, because it's just a less than symbol, so they all are open. I want all numbers less than, so smaller than 5/12. So that means I'm going to be shading down. C and D shade up, so it can't be C or D. And then I'm looking for 5/12. So here there's 12 lines between each of these. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's on the 5th out of 12, so that means B here is going to be my answer. It shows less than 5/12. Now, this time we're taking a word problem and writing an inequality from it. So this says, Pete's Putt-Putt Golf charges $7 per person for their first round of golf. Each extra round is $4 per person. Rick and his 2 friends have $73 to spend on putt-putt. Which of the following inequalities can be used to solve for R, the extra rounds of putt-putt they can play? So this is the same rules as when we were writing linear equations back in Standard 1.1. So we're going to have a number plus or minus a number by x, and then you're going to have some inequality here with the total number. So you can have in any inequality here, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than, and you have your total. And then remember, this number in front of x is always your per number or your each number. And then the number by itself there is going to be your one time or starting number. The important part that makes this part tricky is that it's Rick and his 2 friends, so it's a total of 3 people. So here, for the first round, which only occurs once, each person gets charged $7. So if you have 3 people, 7 times 3 is 21. So they are all, for the whole group, they're going to have to pay $21 once for that first round. And then for every extra round they pay after that, they're going to have to pay $4 each. Well, 4 times 3 is 12. So for every round they play together, they're going to have to pay $12 for each additional round as a group. And then they have $73 total to spend. So that's going to be our total number. And so that means they can spend up to $73. So they could spend $73 or less. So that means my inequality here is going to be a less than or equal to. So 21 plus 12x less than or equal to 73 is going to be my final answer, which is B. This board problem says Ms. Goodwin requires her students to have an 82% test average to be able to go on class field trip. Leah's first 4 test scores are 82%, 84%, 79%, and 86%. There's only one test left before the field trip. Which of the following inequalities could be used to solve for S, the score Leah needs on her last test in order to be able to go on the class trip? Well, here we need to know, or we need to remember that to find average, we add up all of the scores and divide by the number of scores. So we have 82 is a score, and we're going to add that to 84, which was a score, plus 79, plus 86, and then we have this fifth one that we don't know yet, that they say to call S. And so we would add up all those scores once we know S and divide it by 5 because there's 5 tests. And so that's how we would calculate it. But we know that that average has to be 82 or higher to go on the test. So that means that we can have 82, but we can also have greater than 82. So my inequality here is going to be greater than or equal to 82. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to simplify it as much as I can to see which one it's going to match over here. So I'm going to add up these 4 numbers, and when I add up those 4 numbers, I get 331. And then everything else that stays the same. I have my plus S divided by 5 less than or equal to 82. And so remember, you can split your fractions up so that you have 311 over 5. And then you have S over 5 is less than or equal to 82. And what that allows us to do is simplify this fraction, or actually do that division of 5 divided into 311. So when you do that division, you get 66.2, and then I have my plus S over 5 is less than or equal to 82. And so that is what letter A is, which is my final answer. So this problem says Norma earns $27 per hour. She donates 5% of her wages to her favorite charity. If she wants to have at least $918 left for her after her donation, how many hours each must she work? Round the number of hours up to the whole next hour. So the first thing we're going to have to do is write an equation, and then we're going to solve it. So we know that she wants to have at least $918 left. So that means she wants to have greater than or equal to $918 left. And so to calculate how much money she makes, you're going to take $27 times each, which is the hours that she works. However, 5% of her wages go to a charity, which is very nice of Norma. However, that means that she's only getting to keep 95% of her wages. So that means she brings home 95% of her wages. And so she's going to have to, to see how much of that she actually gets to keep after those hours, we're going to have to multiply that times 0.95, which is the decimal form of 95%. And so we're going to go ahead and have to do 0.95 times 27. And when you're probably going to have to go off to the side and work that out, but once you do that, it's going to be 25.65 H. And then I'm going to have to divide both sides by 25.65. And you're going to have to go off to the side and work that out too. And just keep in mind, when you write that as a division problem, the 25.65 will go out front and the 918 underneath. But to get rid of that, you can't have a decimal in your divisor. So you're going to have to move that decimal 2 over to the end. And you'll have to move the number underneath 2 over to the end also. And so this is actually going to be a bigger division problem, but then everything stays the same. And so once you actually do that division, you're going to get h is greater than or equal to 35.7. And remember, it said round to the nearest hour, though. So that's going to be h is greater than or equal to 36 hours. So in order to bring home that much and donate to her charity, she's going to have to work 36 hours or more, which is letter B. Here, I'm going to have to write an equation that shows what the balance is modeling. And so on the left side of the balance, I have a 1 plus 4 x's. And that side, the balance is showing is heavier. So that means that side is going to be bigger. So it's going to be the greater side. And then over here, I have 10 plus 10 plus 1 for a total of 21. And then I just solve. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And that leaves me with 4x is greater than 20. And then I divide both sides by 4. It's a positive 4, so the inequality stays the same. And x is going to be greater than 5, which is letter D, my final answer. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you learned something new.